Hi everyone, thank you for being here. On today's video, I want to talk to you about something that is very relatable to myself and to a lot of beginners out there that are trying to learn copperplate, and that is a grid system. There's a lot of grids nowadays. You can even go online and make your own grids on a website, but very few tell you exactly how wide is supposed to be the letter in relationship to the x height. So I took upon myself to do a little bit of research, and I found a ton of manuals, historical manuals, that talk about that particular case. So from the 1700s to the 1800s, there are so many manuals that I lost count. Some of them I don't even remember the link, but they tell you exactly how to get to that perfect ratio. Now this system is really old, but works every single time for every single angle. Now in my case, because I'm Portuguese, it's easier for me to understand the language on the manual. So I found this really good manual where they have a diagram, and alongside of that they have instructions for you to make your own grid. So let's begin with that. Now if you look at this page, you can see, so this manual is from Luiz Gonçalves Coutinho in 1816. Now this particular manual, it based on just samples. So you see a lot of this kind of page all over the manual, but there is nothing written about it. Maybe there's a second book where you have all the writing. That happens a lot in Portugal, where you have the samples and the text separate. But in this case, I only found this book. So let's look at this grid. So as you can see, you have a bunch of lines close together, and if you see here, these letters follow under this parallelogram. As you can see, it can clearly see all the letters following this path. And this is the grid system. This is the parallelograms that will help you make your perfect letters. Now, if we jump to the next page, this is another manual, another Portuguese manual that I was talking about. And this book is called Nova Arte de Escrever by Antonio Araujo, 1784. As you can see on this page, we have on this corner right here, we have the diagram explaining exactly. So you have your baseline, x height, and they used to use 2 1/4 for the ascenders. If you look back to the first page, so if you look here, you can clearly see you have your parallelogram, and then you have this really long ascender and really long descenders. Nowadays we don't really use this kind of height, but it worked for them, so we are just continue on to make our own grid. So they have all of this schematics for to find the parallelogram, which is these 2 lines right here. They are parallel to each other and they make this parallelogram. On the next page, we have on this side right here, this is the instructions to make the grid, and we are going to follow these rules and then see what we can do with them. Okay, so just like everything else, we start with the blank page and the first set of instructions. So the first instruction is to draw a line, which we'll call it AB. So now that we have our baseline, the next instruction is to draw a perpendicular line, which we'll call CD. So now that we have our perpendicular line, if you notice, I only put the C down here, I didn't put the D, because we need to make our X height. Okay, so I made my X height at 1.5 centimeters, and I added 2 times the x height for the ascenders. I'm not going to include a quarter of the x height because nowadays we don't really use that, so I'm going to stick with this. Plus, on this instructions, in none of the pages it tells us how much is the x height, and also doesn't tell us the angle of the script, but we are going to discover that in a little bit. So the next step is to divide the line CD and CB in half, which is a 45-degree line. Okay, so we have now our 45-degree line that intersects this line at this point, and it will be called E. So this is the point E. So next it tells us to divide the point DE by 5. Okay, so I already put the letters belonging to each section, and the next step is to connect the point C with the point G. So what this does is give us a 51-degree line, which is the angle of the script that we are going to do. The next step is to make parallels to this line on the other spaces that we divided previously. Okay, so now that we made all our parallels, we can clearly see what we need for our practice, and this is the parallelogram. So if you make this for the whole page, and obviously a different x height, you have your grid system to apply to your letters, and they all look the same, have the same proportion, the same width. But now you're saying, yeah, but Telmo, I don't use 51 degrees. I mean, no one nowadays uses 51 degrees for Copperplate. I generally use 55. There is a way around that, and I'm glad you asked, because yes, there is. Let's look at it. So returning to our grid, I'm going to put a 55-degree line and a 65-degree line, just for you to see what we can do with it. Okay, so as you can clearly see now, we have our 55-degree line, our 65-degree line, and look closely at where they cross. So the 65 is crossing between the first 3 divisions, and the 55 is in between 4 divisions. What this means is that if you apply the same rule, but so you make your x height and you make your ascenders line, and you make your perpendicular line, and from this point you make your 55. From the 55 you divide this space by 4. If you use the same thing for a 65, you divide it by 3. So on this page right here, I already put just a 55-degree line. As you can see, so we have exactly the same system, our baseline and our ascenders line, our perpendicular line. We crossed from here a 55, divided by 4, and we drop our parallels to each other. So if you make a page of these, you have your grids. Now I know you probably never will use a different angle for Copperplate, but this is just as a sample for something else. Now I use 65. I already tested this previously, and this works as well. When you get to 65 and you want to say, let's say you want to make a vertical Copperplate, which we already know that it exists historically. So what you do for the 90 is that you use the 65, you apply the same methodology, and from this width right here, you use it for the vertical script. And I'm going to draw the lines just so you can see how it looked like. Okay, so now we have our parallel lines at 90 degrees, and this is the space you will use for your Copperplate, for your vertical Copperplate script. So coming back for the 55-degree line, here, this is what you need if you want to make this in your computer, because it will be better than what I just made here. So you need these 4 lines, you choose the x height wherever you want, it doesn't really matter, as long as it's 3 times the X height. From here, you make a perpendicular line that touches this line right here. You apply your 55, you duplicate the 55 here, and divide by 4. So you make 3 more lines and divide the space in Illustrator. If you're using Illustrator, there's an option to divide the space. Once you have that, you just need to multiply for the whole page. It doesn't matter the X height you choose, it will always work and will always be proportional. Okay, so now that I've shown you this system, you can now have a better understanding on how your letter should look like based on the grid. So this grid is just for you to practice. Don't try to write on it because it will start to fall apart. This is specifically for you to learn how to make the letters work. Once you know that, you just get rid of the grid and start with a new one without that many lines in a way. If you want to practice words, you can, but don't try to write text on this. I will link all the menus that I saw in the description below, and you can see with your own eyes how the system really works. I hope this video was helpful for you to understand how this script really works in an historical context. And I hope you like this video. Leave a comment if you want. If you want to give me any suggestions for the next videos, please let me know, and I'll see you guys on the next one.